this episode reaches one person that needs it, my heart is full. Amen. Happy Easter, everyone. I wish you a calm and peaceful Easter Sunday. Why did nobody tell me that getting sober doesn't just fix your life? Because I really thought it would. I really thought that if I could just get sober, everything else would figure itself out. Like, I didn't have all these other underlying problems. It was just, I thought it was circumstantial, that the fact that I was homeless and living in a tent. I'm like, I just had a bad run, that's all. I didn't believe that I had all these other underlying issues, right? I just thought that I'm not I don't have a problem. I just happen to be living in a tent. Eh, how wild is that? How wild is that to say? I was so used to living that way that it didn't even occur to me, dog, you're homeless. You live in a tent. You might as well live in a garbage can with Oscar the Grouch, dude. How come why did nobody tell me that getting sober doesn't just fix everything, Because I really thought that it would. When I was in addiction, I had this belief that if I could just get clean, everything else would fall into place. Everything else would go back to normal, whatever that is. My relationships would heal themselves, my mind would calm down, I would finally feel peace. I would wake up with purpose. Right, because there's only been 2 times in my entire existence that I knew why I was alive. The first time was when I was 19 and my brother was around 8 years old and I had custody of him. Him and I lived in my car for 3 months until I saved up enough money to get my first place. That kid was going to school out of my car. Ever since then, it was just him and I versus the world. So for the majority of my 20s, that's what my purpose was. I knew why I was alive. I knew that it was my job to make sure Jesse wasn't cold, sad, or hungry. And I did the best I could being a 19-year-old kid. I know now looking back on it that boy could I have done a lot of things different. I could have tried harder to get help. Everything happens exactly the way it does because it has to. My life today, I know why I'm alive. So in 36 years, I've only known why I was on this planet twice. Once when I was 19 and now today. I know that my purpose today is to share my story and just try to be an inspiration to people who are still struggling, people that are in recovery and maybe silently struggling, people that are people that believe that they are too far gone and that it's too late for them because that's where I was at, when God intervened into my life and did something for me that I was not able to do for myself. I didn't believe there was any reason for me to not use. In my head, it was already too late. The time that I had to create a good life for myself had already passed. So I was basically just waiting to die, which is so sad. You know, and I know I'm not the only person that felt that way or that feels that way right now. And I just want to remind anyone that might be watching this right now, it's not too late. You're not too far gone. You deserve to have a good life. It doesn't matter what you've done. You can be forgiven and you can forgive yourself. I thought sobriety was the finish line. but it's not. It's honestly just the beginning. And what do I mean by that? I started using drugs when I was 12 years old. So I never gave myself a chance to develop healthy coping skills or even develop an identity that wasn't completely predicated on getting high. Sobriety was the beginning of healing from all of the damage that I've done to myself over the last 20 years of using drugs. You know, it seems like such a daunting task to get sober. So you think, well, if I can just get sober, I'll be fine. Yes and no. I mean, yes, you have to get sober in order for this process to truly begin. Just being abstinent from substances is the first step in a maybe a lifelong process. Who knows? And I don't know. I mean, a lot of you probably were like me, which, I used escapism. Drugs for me was an escape from things that I either perceived to be too hard or didn't know how to do. Just abstaining from using drugs is the beginning of a potentially lifelong healing process. And like, depending on what your perspective is on that, that could sound awful, but it's a beautiful thing. I believe the majority of human suffering comes from the fear of the unknown. As humans, we naturally stray away from change even when we know that it's for our good. So to hear somebody say, you know, sobriety is just the beginning of a lifelong process, it's it sounded scary to me, but I know now that I wouldn't have it any other way. And there's just so many reasons why. I got sober, but I was still me. Like I said, all of that damage that I did from the time I was 12 until almost 3 years ago now, it's going to take a lot of work, and I've made a lot of progress in under 3 years. I've learned a lot about myself through the course of multiple 90-day residential treatment programs, a 5.5 month cognitive based treatment facility, um, an 18 to 24 month drug court program, a few months of sober living, some good mentorship. That was the blueprint for me. That was the recipe for me that led me to where I'm at today. I got sober and I still had the same thoughts, the same anxiety, the same problem with overthinking and, the same emptiness. I was empty. When you don't have a purpose, that's an empty feeling. And think about it, it makes so much sense. When you do not know what your purpose is, left to our own devices, I ended up in a tent. Once my brother did not need taken care of anymore, I was completely empty. I was like a dandelion blown in the wind. I had no purpose. And I never developed healthy coping skills in order to know how to deal with that. So I turned to the only thing that I knew, which was drugs and alcohol. That's one reason why my show and the other things that I do that helps me stay sober, that's why it's so important to me because it just makes so much sense for me to be doing this. I never knew what I was supposed to do in my life ever. I've always had a hard time with commitment. That's one of the reasons why I couldn't stay sober, because I couldn't commit. Once I really made the commitment, once I really decided that this is what I'm committing to, things started to get a lot easier for me. But once I didn't have somebody needing me, I was completely empty. So I turned to drugs and alcohol, and it almost killed me. That's why it's so important to have a purpose. And there's a few different ways that you can discover that within yourself. For me, it was through coming into a relationship with God. I believe God preserved me through heroin addiction and subsequently revealed my purpose to me. I don't really know how to explain it. I had some push. I don't think I would be sitting in front of this camera if it wasn't for my friend Richie, who I was in treatment with. For whatever reason, he saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And one night, he came up with the whole idea for this show. And I'm still doing it. So, Richie, I don't know if you watch my shows anymore, but thank you, dude. Thank you for helping me understand what my purpose is. And thank you for seeing in me what I couldn't see in myself at the moment. I love you, dude. The only difference was, now that I'm sober, I don't have anything to escape with now. I'd like to say nobody prepares you for that, but I never prepared myself for that. You have to take responsibility for your own life. There's like two kinds of people, I feel like. There's the kind of people that's going to let their hardships in their past be the reason why they don't do nothing and they remain a victim, or they're going to take those things and turn it into the reason why they become successful. I'm the latter. I do not have a plan B. I do not have a safety net. Both my parents, sadly, are still currently in active addiction. I don't have anybody to fall back on. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Because as soon as I understood that there was no one coming to save me, it changed something inside of my brain. Nobody tells you that when the drugs go away, everything that you were running from is still sitting there waiting for you. No one's going to tell you that. Sobriety does not heal you, but it exposes you. Everything in the dark comes to the light eventually. It forces you to face your trauma, your habits, your identity, whatever that may be. It forces you to face whatever beliefs you have about yourself. And that's a tough one. Now, I wonder how many people ever take a moment to really analyze their internal dialogue. We do a lot of damage to our neural pathways in our brains when we're using drugs. But those same neural pathways can be healed. I remember when I was in JTP, this lady came in and you had the opportunity to choose between whether you want to do the standard group in the jail treatment program or you wanted to try something that was called affirmations based healing or something like that. It was like confronting trauma, or it was an affirmations, a positive affirmations based treatment approach. And in the moment I'm like, yeah, I'll try that. I just wanted to do something different to get out of the little area I was locked in. Because if you said, yeah, you got to go with this lady into the library, which is in a whole nother room, and when you're in jail, any bit of movement is attractive. So I remember I went with her, and she gave me a paper, and I was supposed to pick a couple of things off this paper and read them out loud to myself. I remember being so full of shame and guilt that I was not able to do that exercise because I was lying. It wasn't true. I don't remember what things I picked, but it was, we'll just say I deserve to be happy. We'll say it's that. My assignment was I had to read that to myself in the mirror out loud. I wasn't able to do that. As bad as I wanted to, I couldn't do it. Or at least I couldn't look at myself when I was doing it because I didn't believe it. It's really important to analyze your internal dialogue because your thoughts become a feeling. Your feeling becomes an action. We become our thoughts in some way or another. If you've ever watched any of my episodes, you've probably heard me say that before, but it's true. Those neural pathways that we damage during use, we can heal those neural pathways. I was able to do it. I started doing research about this when I got out of treatment. I went into sober living, and I learned that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. For a month, I would brush my teeth with my left hand because I'm right-handed. I would take 25 exaggerated breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth, and then I would look at myself in the mirror and I would say 10 nice things to myself. I couldn't look at myself. For the first couple weeks, I was not able to do it without looking away. But before the month was over, I was able to do it. I was able to look at myself in the mirror and say, I love you. I am kind. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to have a good life. These are the kinds of things that we need to tell ourselves because it's true. And even if you don't believe it, if you try the exercise that I just told you about, it there's science behind it. You can look this up yourself if you don't want to take my word for it. But what it does is it goes past your frontal cortex and it goes into your subconscious and it just plants a seed. And that seed begins to grow the more you water it by saying positive things to yourself about yourself. I would encourage you to try to make a habit of just no matter where you're at or what you're doing, you can do this anywhere. Just take a moment to check in with yourself. Take a moment to analyze what your internal dialogue sounds like because if you find that whatever you tell yourself is unkind to yourself, please, please, I would really encourage you to work on changing that because it can change your life. That exercise I just told you about, that changed my life. I can look at myself in the mirror today. Your perspective will shape your reality. And if you do not have a kind, if you cannot see yourself in a kind way, how are you supposed to see others in a kind way? Think about that, man. It might sound woo-woo or silly to you, but I'm living proof that there's something to what I just told you. I could not look at myself in the mirror, let alone look at myself in the mirror and convince myself that I was deserving of happiness. Just give it a try. Please, what do you have to lose, right? I didn't just have a substance problem, I had a me problem. I kept trying to fix my life without ever addressing my heart. That's a problem. You can only put so many band-aids on something. Like picture like a pipe that's leaking, man. You can only wrap that pipe with so many band-aids before it just bursts. You gotta fix the pipe. You gotta cut out the bad pieces and put in something good. You have to cut out the garbage and replace it with something totally new. For me, that's where Jesus came in. I don't believe in shoving what I believe down anyone's throat. I think attraction is always going to be better than promotion. I would be doing you a disservice if I did not tell you that I did not grow up religious. No one in my family has a relationship with God, at least to my knowledge. That was never a thing in my childhood growing up. No one ever pushed a religion on me. I wanted to know what the truth was. And I started really seeking the truth last year, early in 2025. And through that process, I ended up meeting Jesus. I met Jesus towards the end of 2025, and my life has never been better. I do not have it all figured out by any means. I still have doubts. I still have questions. I still wonder, could that really be true? The story of Jesus. But here's all I know, okay? I opened my heart to Jesus. And what happened, the transformation that is evident in my life today is beyond human explanation. Things that I grew up idolizing, things that were normal to me my whole life growing up, it repulses me now. And I cannot explain it any other way than something supernatural happened to me. It could not have been my own doing, okay? Yeah, I did the work to get to where I'm at, but I would be lying to you, lying to myself if I sat in front of this camera and told you that I am going to take all the credit for that because the radical transformation is beyond human explanation. It's really hard for me. I can't even listen to rap anymore. I grew up listening to rap, thinking it was cool to smoke and chase women and money. It just doesn't sound the same to me anymore. I quit vaping. Even my diet has changed. And I have a peace that surpasses all human understanding. I'm able to look at my part in things today, no matter what the situation is, even if I'm not in the wrong. It doesn't matter what it is. It does not matter the situation. I don't care if I'm wrong. I'm able to identify whatever role I played in the situation and use that moving forward for the next time I'm in a similar situation. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about a bunch of rules. I'm not talking about a bunch of fire and brimstone and scare tactics. I'm talking about a relationship. I don't know about religion. It weirds me out. Something inside of me, I don't know, man. I I just it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like there's all these different denominations of things, and that all stems from a disagreement between men. I'm not talking about a religion. I'm talking about a relationship. I'm talking about a relationship that actually started changing me from the inside out. Something that I was not able to do on my own. Sobriety gave me clarity, but God gave me transformation. God gave me transformation. And I know that if He did it for me, I am positive He is waiting to do it for you. It just takes a little bit of willingness. If you open that door, just a crack, God will fill that gap. And you can close the door you can close it at any moment you get uncomfortable. I stopped asking, why isn't my life fixed? And I started asking, who am I becoming? And that's a big question to answer. I'm becoming a husband. I'm becoming a father. I'm becoming someone that can be a good friend. I'm becoming someone that can be relied on. I'm building a life that I no longer wish to escape from. If you're in a place right now to where you're sober or you're trying to get sober and your mind just will not slow down, I want to give you a couple of things that help me out. The first thing is journaling. My fiance and I designed and published our own recovery journals. We also designed and published our own faith-based journal. And we designed and published our own, it's like a neutral journal. It's like a journal that you don't really got to be in recovery or seeking a relationship with God to reap the benefits from it. And there's so many benefits to journaling. I'll just give you one statistic. 42% of people that write their goals down and revisit them accomplish their goals. That's a huge number. I am a part of that 42%. Because when everything's in your head, it can feel very overwhelming. But when you're able to get it out on paper, you can actually start to process it. And I'm a huge advocate for put a date. I don't care if you open a piece of you don't it don't got to be in my journals, anything. Just get a piece of paper and start writing. I don't care if it's one sentence. Put pen to paper and put a date on it because it's going to be a valuable tool that you'll be able to use when you're having a hard time. You'll be able to look back on all the progress you've made and look at the dates and say, wow, look how far I've come. Our the guided journals that we created are specifically for people in recovery or people trying to rebuild their lives. It's designed to help you get honest with yourself, and most people are trying to avoid that. The longer you avoid yourself, you're only causing more harm. The second thing that really helped me is meditation. And I know some people hear that and they check out, okay? But hear me out, please. There's real evidence showing that meditation can reduce anxiety. It can help lower cortisol levels, which will lower your stress. It improves your emotional control, which is something I really struggled with. And earlier when I was talking about rewiring your neural pathways, meditation plays a huge role in helping your brain rewire how it responds to triggers. And for me, it was one of the first ways that I learned how to sit with my thoughts without running from them. There's always so much going on around you. Sometimes you just need to quiet your brain. You need to go somewhere that's quiet and quiet yourself. You know, I'm building something with this show that is going to outlast me. We got a few things, a few different ways that you can connect with us or be a part of what we're building. We got the journals. It's something you can do by yourself. There's no pressure. You'll be able to find the link to a really good guided meditation in the description of my video. And the last thing, which might be the most important, you can't do this alone. Okay? You can do the journaling and the meditation by yourself, but life, recovery, that's not meant to do alone. That's why we started a Sunday Zoom recovery group. It's just real people having real conversations about what they're going through. No judgment, no pretending, and no filters. Everyone's welcome. It don't matter where you're at. And one more thing that I want to ask you. If you've been through something, addiction, pain, recovery, struggle, and you've made it through even part of that, I want to share your story because your testimony is not just for you. It's for the person that feels exactly like you used to feel. There's someone out there right now that thinking that they are alone or thinking that nobody understands what they're going through and that there's no way out. Your story could be the thing that changes that. Think about that. Think about how cool that is. God does not waste your pain. No matter how obscure you think your story is, somebody out there has gone through something so similar you might think they were with you. Our stories can save people's lives. That's why I think it's so important. That's why I get on this camera and run my mouth every week. Some of the most powerful content on this channel and other channels that I follow have come from, real people, real stories, and real struggles. So if you want to submit your testimony, you can do that below. I'll leave the link to my email. It's thegannyshow@gmail.com. You can stay anonymous. You can share your name, whatever you're comfortable with. I'll make any combinations that I need to make. Please, we need to get our stories out there. I need you to understand that what you went through was not pointless. Like I said, God does not waste your pain. If I can affect one person in a positive way by getting up here and telling my story and getting vulnerable with you guys, and that means what I went through was not pointless. That means that I went through what I did for a reason. You can contribute to that. It might actually be the thing that helps save someone. That is no small feat. If you want to be a part of the Zoom group, get the journals or access the guided meditation, submit your story. Everything will be linked below. I really wish somebody would have told me this earlier, but getting sober will not fix your life, but it will give you an opportunity to finally face it. And if you're willing to do that, it's where everything will begin to change for you. Until the next one, I need you to remember you are loved. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I love you. Thank you for all the support. I'm out.